Clinton hosted an event for some of her biggest campaign donors last night at New York City's Plaza Hotel, where she reportedly said she was proud to have stood up to Vladimir Putin after Russia's 2011 elections. But she may now have a political problem of a different kind. Politico reporting some contributors are calling for a full postmortem over how her billion-dollar campaign lost to Donald Trump. Meanwhile, former chairman of the campaign, John Podesta, this morning pointing a finger at the FBI in a Washington Post op-ed, writing, comparing the FBI's massive response to the overblown email scandal with a seemingly lackadaisical response to the very real Russian plot to subvert a national election shows something is deeply broken at the FBI. Karen Finney was the spokesperson for the Hillary Clinton campaign. Good to see you as always, Karen. Thanks for coming in.
Absolutely.
Do you agree with him about the FBI?
Absolutely. He makes an excellent point in this piece as well, that if you consider that as part of the email, this very thorough investigation that the FBI did, they put people on planes and, went to Denver to interview people, but somebody couldn't get in a car and drive 3 minutes over to the DNC to say, hey, here's what we think is happening. Instead, left messages with a guy at the IT help desk. I mean, that just boggles the mind in terms of the level of seriousness that the FBI, may have taken this. And I'll tell you, one of the problems that I have with, and I think a lot of us have with Donald Trump's response to this and his folks. I mean, look, they're trying to make this about sour grapes. That's not, and John makes it very clear in his piece, and a lot of us feel like that's not what this is about. This is about, we need to know what happened so it doesn't happen again. And if he would at least bother to show up at some of these intelligence briefings on a daily basis, maybe he too would hear some of the, you heard Boris this morning saying, well, he doesn't just want to hear it from members of Congress. Great, then how about go to your intel briefings and hear it directly from members of the intelligence community?
Let's go back to the criticism of the FBI, because a lot of your fellow Democrats have been very critical of what Donald Trump and some of the people inside of his transition team have had to say about the intelligence community. Here's John Podesta in the Washington Post. Here you are sitting on set at MSNBC going after the FBI. What's the difference?
Well, in this case, we're talking about, the FBI, for example, was the one agency. Remember back in October when Homeland Security and DNI came out with a joint statement that said they believed that the Russians were behind this and that it went all the way to the Russian government. The one agency that said they didn't want to get involved was the FBI, and they said because they didn't want to politicize things. Certainly, Mr. Comey did not have that problem when it came to the additional emails that may have been discovered that turned out to be nothing 10 days out from an election, knowing that very well politicized an issue. So time and again, just the judgment of Mr. Comey and the FBI specifically, I think, has been problematic.
Do you believe it changed the course of this election?
I don't think we'll know for sure ever. I mean, I think there are a number of factors that are very troubling that even, again, regardless of whether or not, this isn't really about changing the outcome of this election at this point. This is about making sure we know going forward what happened. I mean,
which seems to have been in a different way. In a different way, that seems to be the point that we're hearing from Politico today, that a lot of Democratic donors, bundlers, people who spend a lot of time, money, and effort trying to get Hillary Clinton elected. Let me ask you about this, because last night they were saying there needs to be a deep dive. We need to know what happened here. If you want us to continue to raise money, we need to know how it was spent. Were there mistakes made? How do we make sure those mistakes don't happen again? Is that legit? And does that need to happen, and who does it?
Well, it is legitimate. I mean, people give their money and they, supported our cause, and obviously Hillary worked very hard. And so I think it's perfectly fair to say we want to better understand what went on here. But again, so there's two pieces here, right? When it comes to the campaign itself, and we talked about this, we've all talked about this many times over the last few weeks, that there are any number of things that we can talk about and point to where mistakes were made. There are also other factors that we're pointing to now that suggest whether or not you say they had an impact or not, they have serious implications going forward, like fake news, like what happened with the FBI, which is exactly why John was calling for, let's have a full accounting, let's have an independent look at what happened. They were happy to do that when it came to the emails. Shouldn't we be as concerned when it comes to the possibility that Vladimir Putin himself tried to pick a candidate in an American election? That should trouble all of us.
So we're out of time, but I just want to ask you very directly, should President Obama then have taken action sooner? Since he spoke directly to Vladimir Putin before the election? Should he have taken more aggressive action sooner if he believed that the evidence was clear that they were trying to meddle in a U.S. election? Quickly.
If you believe the evidence was clear, yes. And I hope that's something we'll hear more about today.
All right, Karen Finney, always good to see you.
Good to see you.
Thank you for coming in. Developing now.